Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unwound. I'm your host, Gunny T. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Eric.
Eric Shagru.
Eric, how you doing tonight, man?
So I'm feeling pretty fucking fantastic.
Yeah,
it's a good day.
You just had to beat me out of my intro, huh?
I did.
I don't know why you don't like Shigaraki. He's a villain in an anime that I love, and it's just a great name, you know?
I don't, whatever, dude.
Nobody asked you anyway. I want to ask you a question today, man. Other than me being in a constant aggravation in your life, how's your mental health, bud?
You know, typically it has its ups and downs, but here recently it's been very, very up. And I'm cool with that.
Outstanding.
How about you? How's your brain ticking?
You know, honestly, it's a lot better than it has been in recent years. I finally found what I consider to be my groove, my drive again. So I'm feeling pretty good, but, you know, I do struggle with mental health on a daily basis. I have a lot of demons that I fight.
Would you like to elaborate on that? Let the listeners know what the hell you're talking about. You're definitely not Constantine, all right?
How do you know who I am? Look, have you ever seen me and John Constantine in the same room at the same time?
I would.
Well, there you go. But anyway, to elaborate, I struggle with a lot of demons, man. I struggle with self-image issues. I struggle with past issues. I struggle with constant need. I've struggled with addiction, so there's always, and not just, I've been addicted to alcohol. I've been addicted to pills, cigarettes. Addiction is a constant thing in my life that I battle with on a daily basis.
So you say you struggle pretty often.
I do.
Pretty consistently. And what do you think all this started?
Well, if I had to pick a time and a place, I'm going to go ahead and be honest with you and the listeners. I'm not really good about certain dates and times, but, like they say in the movies, it all stems back to my childhood.
It was really hard to keep records back with stone tablets and such.
It was hard, but, we had the chisels, and, I'm sure that a lot of our roads are paved with some of my records, but, but no, just I had a pretty hard life growing up. There's some things that I'm willing to get into and some things that I'm not, but I'll say that my parents, as much as I idolized them and loved them at the time of their passing, I didn't have the greatest upbringing. I didn't have the greatest childhood. My father had a lot of demons himself that he battled with. He also battled with addiction. His addiction was alcohol. And every time that he drank, he liked to put his hands on his kids in a very violent way. Me especially. I don't know why I was singled out. Because all the other kids, with the exception of my little sister Destiny, she didn't get any of it, but the rest of us got it pretty bad. But I always seemed to be, I don't want to say his favorite target because that sounds pretty terrible, but I was the one that seemed to catch the brunt of it most of the time. The one thing that was able to help me forgive him later in life is when he put the bottle down for the last time. He never put his hand on any of us ever again. And I think if it wasn't for that, I would never have been able to forgive him. But, yeah, it all started back with my childhood and with, my father being an abusive drunk. And, there were other things inherent there too. I won't go into details about this, but I did have a particular family member do some things that were not, you know, not okay for us to talk about on the podcast, I would think, or even if it is okay, I don't necessarily want to get into the details of that. But that happened for a number of years, and it's always, it fucks you up when it's somebody that you're supposed to trust, you know, a family member, especially somebody that, you know, you love. They say they love you, and then they do the things that they did, and it breaks you, especially from such a young age. When that started, I was 8 years old, and it didn't stop until I was about 12. And that fucked me up pretty bad, and I've been pretty fucked up ever since. I created kind of a whole different me, so to speak. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why I walked the path I did, or I said the things that I did, or I did the things that I did, until I got into therapy way, way later in life. It started probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But the way that my therapist explained it to me was that when a trauma happens to you, especially at a young age, and you've been a victim of something, there's a lot of different ways that people handle it. But the way that she felt like I handled it was I created armor. She called it my armor. And it was basically this entirely different persona, this entirely different person that was incapable of being hurt. That armor was, in a sense, my protection. And as time passed, that armor grew. And when I say armor, when I say I created this different person, I told a lot of lies. That's been one of my biggest failings in life, is lying about who I really was, lying about some of my accomplishments and the things that I've done. You know, just making myself seem bigger and badder than I actually was, as a form of not being hurt again. You know, if people thought that I was just this big badass person, then nobody would fuck with me. So I hid behind that armor. And that armor served a dual purpose too. You know, if people liked me, I felt like, you know, you don't fuck with the people that you like, you know. Maybe you pick with them and you joke with them. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, but
so that's a pretty common coping mechanism. I was just gonna make that comment. You can continue.
Okay. I thought you were gonna build on that. But yeah, man. So I wore the armor for years and years. The armor grew as I grew, until it became so fantastical that obviously, you know, somebody had to pull it down. Somebody had to pull it apart. And then when they did, I felt like that little boy again. I felt naked. I felt afraid. I felt
vulnerable.
Yes. Because without the armor, all that was left was me. And I didn't know who the hell I was. I didn't know, you know, what I was capable of. Was me enough? Because it never felt like enough. You know, could I really do life without the armor? Could I really be a person? Could I be a person people could respect? Could I be a person that people could love? Could I be a person that people liked or people wanted to be around? Could I be a person that people didn't hurt?
Well,
but
at this point in like, you know, your healing process, how do you feel about that now?
Learned a lot of lessons. A lot of those lessons have happened, I'd say, in the last 4 or 5 years. One of the lessons that I learned was the armor was never real protection for me. The armor kept me from becoming who I probably could have been. It was more weighing me down than it was boosting me up. And that, even with the armor on, I was still getting hurt. It was just kind of a security blanket that made me feel like with each new hurt, with each new trauma, with each new pain, I could shoulder it, cast it aside, or bury it down deep like I always have, and just move the fuck on because there was always a new situation to get into. But
Right.
the armor didn't protect me from anything. It was more of a burden than anything else.
And I mean, that's something that I can relate to. But I mean, like at this point, like you know, now that you've shed pretty much that armor that you carried around with you so much, how do you cope with it now? Like, what's your new armor?
My new armor is just realizing that I am enough and that I can do the things that I want to do and the things that I've dreamed of. But to be able to do that, I had to put the old armor away. I had to put away the facade. I had to put away the mask that I wore, and I had to find out who I was. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that I do know who I am now. I think that I've got a pretty good idea. I think that I'm on the right path. I finally found my drive again. I finally found things that I want to do and things that I want to accomplish for myself. That was another problem with the armor, and that was something that, you know, I guess we can get into in a little bit. One of my downfalls in life, and something that added to a lot of my mental health problems. But as of right now, just realizing that me as a person is enough is how I'm coping with it now.
So, like, besides the abuse that, or whether you want to call it abuse or not, just the kind of the hectic house life that you had as a kid, was your dad affectionate when he wasn't, you know, drunk?
Not really. Not until he put the bottle down completely. He was a very guarded man. He was kind of rock solid, you know. He was very black and white. He was, this is right, this is wrong. I mean, as a kid, we had a bedtime routine, and about the only affection that I remember him showing before he put the bottle down was every night before bed, all of us kids would line up and we would give our mom and dad kisses and hugs, a kiss on the cheek and a hug, and then it was time for bed. That really was all of the affection that I received from my dad until I'd say I was about 15 years old, 15 or 16, whenever he put the bottle down.
So
Mama was the tender one.
Well, do you think that lack of like soft emotion from your dad plays a role in how overly emotional you've grown to be? Like, I'm not saying that you're overtly emotional, but comparatively between the two of us, you have emotion. I don't.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely the more emotional of the two of us, and you're not wrong. I am hyper emotional. I do believe that probably plays a part because, you know, me and my girlfriend talked about this a little bit today too, and not just, you know, when it comes to affection between parents and children, or just a lot of the things that I didn't receive that I wanted. And we'll start with my dad and with my childhood, but we'll move all the way up into actual relationships. And this is kind of an unfair thing that I've done to other people, I think. But I give what I never received and what I want to receive. The level of emotion, the level of love, the level of care, the level of everything that I give to other people is what I lack from a child all the way up into my adult life. And, you know, me and your wife Donna have talked about this too. It's, to me, part of it is that heals the part of me that never got back what I give.
Right.
And I believed that for a long time, up until, I'd honestly say today, because, you know, the fact of the matter is, people like you exist. And I'm not saying this is a slap, but everybody is different. And I'm starting to believe that the level of emotion, the level of love, the level of everything that I've given because I wanted to receive that, almost expected to receive that, or did expect to receive that, overwhelmed a lot of the people that I've been with in the past because maybe they weren't capable of that level of emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like, me personally, I sabotaged a lot of the relationships I was in growing up because I wanted a specific level of, you know, care, I guess. So much so that, you know, like, I sacrificed my own happiness to make whoever I was with happy. And over time, it would just, it made me resent that person because once I realized that I wasn't happy, you know, what the fuck are you doing to me? Like, why are you, you know, making me feel the way that I feel, even though, in all fairness, it was my fault from the beginning.
Right. And that's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that it was a hard pill to swallow, really. Like, I think I just lied a little bit. Because, I mean, when I met my wife, I had to have one relationship before her where I didn't do that. And, except for the fact that that relationship began on a rocky foundation, it was probably the healthiest relationship I'd ever been in my life. And then I met my wife and everything just fell into place. It was actually a lot easier for me than it could have been for other people because I don't tend to get hung up on the past. I try to always move forward.
That is one of my biggest failings, is being hung up on the past, dwelling too much on things that have already happened or things that I can't change. You spoke about your previous relationships. That too, you know. My dad, I don't want to call him a monster because I don't believe that he was a monster. I think that, like I said, he battled demons, and I think that alcohol was one of those demons, and that he became that demon when he drank. But he was nothing if not dependable. He always made sure that we had roof over our heads, we had clothes on our back, we had foods in our bellies. I said foods. We're going to gloss that over. He made sure that he took care of his family, and that was one of the things that I picked up from him. That man had so many dreams, and after he put the bottle down and me and him could actually speak on a one-on-one level, he told me about those dreams. He wanted to bring me into those dreams. You know, he had plans to open a motorcycle shop, you know, where not only did he sell motorcycles, new ones and used ones, but that he refurbished motorcycles. He brought in old motorcycles and fixed them up. You know, anybody that needed repairs on their motorcycles, he was going to take care of those too. This man was 56 years old at the time and went back to school to get an automotive degree. He was already one of the best mechanics I ever met in my life, but he went and put it on paper. He got 2 automotive degrees and 1 motorcycle degree, all while working for the college that he was going to. Had big dreams, but he never realized any of those dreams. He constantly put those dreams aside so that he could take care of his wife and his kids. And that's what I was raised on, so I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I thought that was what life was about, was sacrificing everything that you wanted because you're a man. That's what men do. Well, I know there's going to be some flack about me saying that, but I mean, I'm just relating how I was raised and what I was led to believe.
I feel like as a parent, it's a little bit different than being just in a one-on-one relationship with somebody. Like there needs to be that reciprocation between partners. But when it comes to the kids, I'll sacrifice whatever I have to make sure that my kids have what they need.
Absolutely. But what I'm learning now is that you can do both. You can take care of your kids and realize your dreams. But to me, that was never an option because that's just not how I was raised. And when I got into my first marriage, that marriage, I mean, I was already broken. Let's be honest, I'm still broken. But that marriage broke me because, you know, before that, I was super religious, you know, and in our faith, we believed that marriage was for life, marriage was final. You know, you did everything that you could to work a marriage out, but you did not get divorced. Again, you know, with my dad, everything was all about the wife and the kids. It was all about, you know, you work, you take care of them, you do everything that you can for them, and you sacrifice everything that you want and everything that you aspire for so that they can be okay. And I was still in my armor when I got married. I was still not who I should have been or who I was supposed to be. And obviously that marriage failed. And it was the failing of that marriage that broke me. Because my whole life I'd been raised to, you know, take care of my family. I'd been raised that that's what I was supposed to do. And then I got into that marriage and that's what I did. I worked, I took care of, you know, her and my kids. And then it failed and she left and I didn't see her or my kids for 3 straight months. You know, that was probably one of the hardest times of my entire life. And I don't fault her for what she did anymore. I used to. I was so fucking angry. But she did what she had to do because looking back at it all, you know, everything had turned inward. You know, I wasn't a great person. I wasn't a great person to be around. I had a lot of failings that I never took accountability for. But on the flip side of that, when she left, it started a cycle with me that was super unhealthy. And that cycle was, okay, well, she's gone. The kids are gone. Now I don't know what to do with myself. Now I don't know what to do with my life. What am I supposed to do?
To preface this, you know, like Alfred once told Bruce that, you know, why do we fall down?
So that we can get back up.
So we can learn to pick ourselves up, right?
That.
So you can use failed relationships as a way to learn, or you can be a victim from it. How would you classify yourself with your past relationships?
That's a very good question. I would say up until very, very recently, I was a victim.
And at the same time, the assailant, right?
Yes. I don't think that I ever really truly picked myself up. I think I just kind of crawled into a hole and licked my wounds and then moved on to the next one without healing.
I mean, you know, that's another common thing. A lot of people can be in a really good relationship, but pains from the past can, you know, make it wither from the inside.
That's very true.
So how does that make you feel?
I was waiting for that therapist question. You've been dying to ask the whole episode.
Yeah.
Made me feel like shit, Eric. I mean, it made me feel terrible. You know, like nothing ever worked. Like nothing that I tried worked. Nothing that I ever did meant anything to anyone. So yeah, I felt pretty fucking horrible about it.
Yeah.
I've always been like a way station to people, you know, or like a port in the storm, you know.
So for those of us that aren't pirates and, you know, big bouldering inconveniences on the interstate, can you elaborate? What is a way station to you?
You know, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, yar. So what I mean is, I was a temporary comfort. I was a temporary thing in people's lives. I was, you know, shelter in a storm. You know, they would be in a bad position that they'd most likely put themselves in. and they would come to me for help and for comfort, and I would offer that willingly, unwaveringly. And then when they got what they felt like they needed, they would move on. And then I was left to wonder why. Does that make more sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't what I was giving and what I was offering what they needed or what they wanted? You know?
Yeah, and that's hard on anybody.
It is.
Like,
that shit ground me into dust.
and I think that's something that a lot of men deal with is, you know, we get to hear about all of our shortcomings, and it doesn't matter like where that source is. Like we hear it at work, you know, like we hear it from our friends, we hear it at home, and then like it's so rare to get, you know, a good boy.
And that's
we
all we
love
really
those.
want. Is just a good boy, you know?
Just tell me I'm a good boy.
No, I'm probably going to butcher this completely. But I saw a video on TikTok one time of this lady, and she was one of those like self-help, you know, women empowering speakers. And, you know, she had written several books, and, you know, she was at a book signing, and this man walked up, and he wanted her to sign his book, and she did. And he asked her, he said, you know, I read your book, and, you know, I looked at all of your polls and all of your statistics and everything on women and their happiness and what they want in relationships and how they view men and, you know, all of these things. And he was like, but how many men did you poll? And she said, well, none. And he said, well, that's convenient. And she said that stopped her cold, and she was like, wow. And he was like, you see that woman and those 3 little girls over there? And she said, yeah. He said, they are harder on me than anybody in my entire life ever has been or ever will be. They would rather me die on my white horse than show any weakness, show any form of weakness or emotion. They always want me to be strong. They always want me to be everything that they need and they want. And then he walked away. And she said that really changed her perspective on a lot of things. But that's how, you know, it's not just being my upbringing. You know, a lot of us go through that. A lot of us are, you know, it's not just what they want, it's what's expected.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes hard to come to terms with because we feel too, we hurt too, we have emotions, we have dreams, we have aches and pains, we get sick, you know, we go through a lot of the same things that they go through with the exception of a few things, and, you know, most of us are willing to give ground on that. But there's still that image, you know, that image to hold. There's still those expectations.
Yeah, that's what it's like. That's life. Like if you show, doesn't matter who it is, it could be anybody. You show the first sign of weakness, that first kink in your armor, and that's exactly where they're gonna attack.
Absolutely. And you know, the most messed up part of that is it doesn't always come from, as a matter of fact, in my experience, it almost never comes from your enemies or, you know, even strangers. Most of the time it comes from people that say that they love you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
And
that's
like,
the hardest part.
I've come to the conclusion that we tend to give to people what we want to receive. And
Yes.
we think that by doing that, we're telling them what we want. And in reality, you know, that's just who he is. or that's just who she is, because it works on both sides.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I think that if we could collectively be more vocal and upfront about what we need and what we want from other people, maybe as a society we could all be a little bit happier.
That tracks. I agree with that. Communication is one of the biggest and hardest things between people, and not just relationships. I mean, friends, just people in general. It's not everybody's good at communication, and that's just what it is. If you don't have an open dialogue, especially with a partner, and I think one of the biggest problems when it comes to a relationship, especially, is that not every partner listens to understand; they listen to respond.
And I think that you need, when you come to someone, you need to be upfront about what you want. Like, if you're here to rant, tell me in the beginning, and then I will listen to what you have to say. If you come to me and you want to have like an open dialogue, then yeah, I'm going to respond. But some people just want to, they just want to vent. And instead of telling people that in the beginning, like whoever you're having your conversation with wants to have, their own input as well. And it frustrates the person that just wanted to vent.
It does.
And that breakdown of communication. Yeah. Well, that breakdown of communication is going to keep that person that wanted to vent from going back to that person.
Yes.
But on the topic of mental health, where would you say you put yourself right now? Scale of 1 to 10.
If we're being honest, I would say a pretty strong 6. And that doesn't sound great, but it's miles from where I was. I would say that I kind of hover around a 1 or a 2.
That's what I was going to ask, like, compared to 6 months ago, like, where were you then?
Oh, I was definitely hovering between a 1 or a 2. I stay in a pretty dark place. And I mean, even now, I go into my head a lot. I live in my head a lot. I'm an overthinker. That's another one of my failings. And I honestly still haven't figured out how to fix that. But I overthink every scenario that I'm in. I overthink scenarios that haven't even happened. I put a lot of things in my own head, just based on past traumas, things that I've been through. It's not easy for sure, but one thing that's helped me is having a pretty good support network. You and Donna have always been there. Anytime that I've been in a dark place, or I've needed somebody, you guys are only a phone call away or a message away. That's helped a lot, especially, here recently, now that I feel like I'm finally on a healthy journey. My girlfriend Rachel, even before she was my girlfriend, back when we were just, she was one of my best friends. Some of the darkest moments in my life, I picked up the phone and I called her, and she always answered. And, no, she's not super emotional. We've talked about that before. She's a lot like you. But sometimes all I needed was just for her to listen, and she would do that. She wouldn't say a word. She would just let me vent and then listen to me cry and, offer whatever support that she felt like she could. I've always got my sensei Tyrone, who, I can always count on him to tell me not what I want to hear, but exactly what I need to hear. And then he'll throw that cherry on top and say, stop being a pussy, and that's always, that's always picked me right up. I've always appreciated that from him. But yeah, just having a good support network, has definitely helped. Also making a lot of these realizations myself. At the end of the day, regardless of whether or not you have a support network or you don't have a support network, you're the one that has to do the work. You have to make the realizations. You have to pick yourself up, like you referenced, Batman earlier. Nobody is going to be there to pick you up. You have to pick you up. People can help you. People can, offer encouraging words, but they can't do the work for you. And that was one of the hardest pills for me to swallow, is the fact that while I was busy trying to save everybody else and trying to help all these other people, I was neglecting the one person that needed my help the most, and that was me.
Yep.
So what I would say, especially to our listeners, our fans, and anybody who may be struggling the way that I have in my life, or is just struggling with anything at all, number one, it begins with you. You have to do the work. You have to put in the time. You have to find whatever it is within yourself that makes you realize that you are worth it. That you have to help yourself. And once you find that, then you just have to put one foot in front of the other, and that's really all it is.
Self-reflection really is like the utmost necessity. Like I kind of came to the realization at a younger age that, if you can't have fun by yourself, what makes you think that you're any fun to be around?
Right.
But I mean, even adversely, like if you can't make yourself happy, how do you expect to keep someone else happy?
Right.
Like you can't expect somebody else to just be happy that they're making you happy, because, at our very core, we're selfish creatures. Like, we may enjoy causing a smile on someone's face or seeing someone's eyes light up when we do things for them. But at the same time, we want that too.
Right.
We want it to be reciprocated. But sometimes you do get into those dark places where you feel like you can't do those things. Where, I definitely dealt with a deep depression at a younger age. And, you didn't see, there was no light to see. There was no happiness to be had. There was no fun. And you have to dig deep. And it does help to have that support network. If it wasn't for the friends that I had at the time, I wouldn't be here right now. Definitely fucking wouldn't be here right now.
What you said resonated with me on a pretty deep level too. There's a meme that I share from time to time because it resonates with me so hard, and what you said reminded me of it. And the meme states that at some point you don't care whether or not there's a light at the end of the tunnel anymore. You're just tired of the tunnel.
Oh yeah. Fuck that tunnel, bro. Dude, I walked out of that tunnel and wrote my fucking name on the wall.
That being said, talking about mental health and everything that we've been through, and having great support networks and great friends and things like that. Not everybody always has that, but there are still people out there willing to help. There's the suicide hotline. There are resources in everybody's town and everybody's state. There will always be somebody. One thing that I don't want to openly admit is that I've struggled with some pretty horrible thoughts, and we'll leave it at that. But when I struggled with those thoughts, those are the times that I reached out to the people that I knew cared about me. If anybody that is listening to this podcast struggles with those things, definitely reach out. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your family. If you don't have those things, reach out to a hotline. reach out to somebody. You are worth it. And I can't say that enough. I would scream that from the top of the tallest mountain at the top of my fucking lungs. You are worth it. Nothing is worth your life. Reach out to somebody. Hell, at the end of this episode, we'll put our email, down again if you guys want to write it down. Reach out to us. Send us an email. Tell us what you're struggling with. We can't do the steps for you. We can't pick you up and dust you off. You have to do that. But we can listen. We might be able to relate. We'll definitely do what we can. But if you need somebody and you don't have anybody, we can be those people.
Yeah.
But just reach out to somebody.
Because, I definitely have my scars. Fucking physical and emotional, mental, all that. I've been there.
Absolutely.
And I'm an open book too. So I may tell you some embarrassing shit about me growing up, and that may make you feel better about yourself.
If nothing else, we can definitely make you laugh.
It's like I tell my wife all the time. She, every time she gets excited about something to do with her dad, and I'm like, you may have had all these negative times with your dad. And I was like, must be fucking nice.
And we're back.
I could still taste that milkshake that he got me the first time he got to come visit us.
Oh no, I didn't have a dad growing up. Grow up, man. Jesus Christ. I love you, man.
No.
That was a little bit creepy. So I think this is a pretty good place to wrap it up. What do you think?
You should always wrap it up. Unless you're fit. Even if you're fit, wrap it up.
Like the man said. Eric, do you remember right off the top of your head what our email is for the podcast?
Oh, it's unfilteredunwound, all one word, @gmail.com.
Like I said, if you guys want to reach out, if you're struggling with something, there's our email. Definitely reach out. Also, again, if you want to hear something, you want us to talk about a specific subject, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know about that too. If you want to be a guest on the show, maybe you have a story you want to tell. We're open to all of those things. Eric, where can they find you on the internet?
I'm on Facebook.
We got to get you a better tagline for that shit.
That's about it.
So you can find him at Eric Segru on Facebook.
Yes, you can.
And you can find me at Douglas Gunny Terrell or Lost Fox on most forms of social media. Thank you guys for listening. We'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Definitely leave us a comment. All of that stuff helps our podcast grow. It costs money. A so-sog McBiscuit and 4,000 chicken vaginas. It's free. Not being a piece of shit. We'll see you next time.
Bye.